Good day, dear colleagues. I'm happy to welcome you at our session. I would like to congratulate you all with the financial day of the Financiers and with the 30th anniversary of Kazakhstan. Wish you prosperity and well-being for your families. The topic of our discussion is Sustainable Development Goals for Kazakhstan, Corporate Governance, Green Economy, Social Responsibility. Thank you very much to our colleagues from the UNDP for providing us with a funny video which is reflecting the topic of our today's discussion. Could you please start the video?
В порядке? Вам нужна минутка? Хорошо. Отлично. Слушайте внимательно, люди. Я кое-что знаю о вымирании. Позвольте мне сказать вам, что вымирание — это плохо. И я надеюсь, вы тоже знаете.
Listen to me carefully. I know something about the dying out. You're striving to that, but this is the most strange thing I have heard in the 70 million years. We were facing asteroid, and what is your reason? You're coming to the climatic catastrophe, but every year hundreds of billions of the national funds are spent by the states for the minerals mining. Can you imagine if you would subsidize the same amount for the huge asteroids? This is what you are doing. I think what you could do with this money. All over the world, people live in poverty. Don't you think that would be more reasonable to pay this money to help them instead of dying out of the whole species of the mankind, of the human beings? You have a chance to improve the economy and get back to recovery from the pandemic. This is a good chance for the whole human beings society. Don't choose dying out. Save yourself before it's too late. It's time to stop finding the causes and reasons. It's time to act. Thank you. Yes, the time to change has come. The questions of the global sustainable development and transfer to the green economy is the key agenda all over the world. The concept of sustainable development is a sort of paradigm of the new development and strategy for the whole planet, for the Earth. In the summit of Glasgow of the UN have called to react to the climate change. The measures taken are not enough, but since the countries have to focus on the fast recovery after the pandemic, including the mined minerals, nevertheless, all the countries have agreed on the understanding of the climate change's problems. Financial organizations and large financial institutions, large investors are able to be the main driver in transition to the sustainable development of economies. It is planned that by the year 2025, 1/3 of all assets will be the assets devoted to the sustainable development. This will be $53 trillion. Today, the largest financial institutions plan their expenses by 2030 for the SDG project development, $750 billion. $1 trillion is planned by the Bank of America. More than 450 financial organizations all over the world, banks, insurance companies, and pension funds with a total volume of assets $130 trillion have joined this initiative for the carbon neutrality. Today's focus of our discussion will be placed from the theoretical vision of the role of the financial market in the building of the financial stable economy to the domestic Kazakhstan financial market and the whole economy transition to ESG and green economy. It is a balanced system of control of human risks, ecological and social risks, and the main issues here is the readiness of our market to transformation and difficulties in choosing the profits of investments and ESG parameters. The possibility to find the correct investor and correct project in our economic conditions, as you understand, it is quite difficult. We see that Kazakhstan has joined the initiative of decarbonization of economy. In October, in the conference, the way for achieving goals of Paris Agreement of carbon neutrality, the head of our state has informed of the doctrine of carbon neutrality by 2060. Starting from this year, we have an economic code. Green taxonomy is developed, taking into account dependence of economy on carbon. The low carbon development of Kazakhstan strategy is being developed. As for the financial market, we have tried to create the required regulatory legal base for the use of the green financing instrument, green social bonds, sustainable development bonds, and green credits or loans. In 2020-2021, we have attracted about 55 billion Tenge for placement in green and social bonds, and there is active work on development of social projects placed on the platforms of Kazakhstan stock exchanges. In this sense, it is very interesting to understand the opinion of the internal and international experts about the initiatives and measures to be taken on sustainable development and forecasts we have in each of our financial institutions. Let me introduce to you the participants of our discussion. Vitaly, representative of the UNDP in Kazakhstan, Vitaly Vremish. Thank you for participating in our discussion. Thank you very much. Tatyana, Deputy Director of the Department for Financial Institutions, European Bank of Reconstruction and Development. Gaukhar, Buribayeva, Chairman of the Management Board, Damu Entrepreneurship Development Fund. This is one of the most active issuer in the sphere of social and green financing. Alina, Aldambergen, Chairman of the Management Board, Kazakhstan Stock Exchange. Nazira Sadbekova, Head of Functioning Directorate, Eurasian Development Bank. Georgievna, I would like to start with you. As of today, BRD is one of the largest investors in the ecological projects, green projects, to the amount of 15.3 billion euro. The bank is determining the trends, approaches to financing of ESG. They determine the principles used by the investors and issuers. Recently, EBRD has stated that starting from the 2022, EBRD has stated that they will ensure compliance with the requirements on achievement of zero emissions by the year 2050. In European, Tatyana, what measures should be taken for transition to the carbon neutrality in Kazakhstan, and what should be done by us as regulator and the market as a whole? Thank you very much for your questions. This is a very relevant topic which is discussed by the financial regulators, by the international organizations and commercial organizations. So we believe that Kazakhstan has a huge potential in adoption of the ESG principles. And today many things have been done, in particular the concept of development of Kazakhstan and achievement of carbon neutral program by 2060, development of the green financial system and creation of the regional hub on the green investments, we believe that the main thing which should have been done is determination of the problem and development of the measures for its solution. This all has been done. The next step, we believe, should be development of the required regulatory requirements for participants of the market, because according to our polls made in the previous year of the commercial banks in all countries of the Central Asia, including Kazakhstan, how they understand the relevance of this problem, not all of them included into the list of their priorities, and not all of them plan introduction of ECG in the nearest future. Partially, this position can be explained by the lack of the obligatory regulatory requirements to the market participants, but also absence of the expertise in this sphere, because this topic is very relevant, but it is quite recent. That is why maybe our recommendations would be to expedite or accelerate the preparation of the regulatory documents and norms, to provide more trainings for the market participants, and also involve in the discussion a wider group of stakeholders, not banks, insurance and financial companies, but also the corporate sector, because there are risks and problems connected with the climate change. They are relevant not only for the financial sectors, but for the corporate partners as well. From our side, we are ready to provide the financial and technical support and share the expertise. At the regulatory level, I would like to add that recently a special club of central banks was created recently, which includes 83 central banks and regulatory authorities all over the world. The club was established for the discussion of issues connected with the climate change and risks connected with that process, and development of measures on prevention of these risks. They discuss these phenomena, they discuss stress testing and development of recommendations. That is why joining this club would be very useful for Kazakhstan, because this information very relevant and it can be received by Kazakhstan. Thank you. Mr. Remish, thank you very much for your participation in the 9th Congress of Financiers. It would be difficult to imagine our today's session without representative of the UNDP, of the UN, which is the author of the concept of the sustainable development. We would like to have more details about the work performed in Kazakhstan, in particular assistance to transition to the green economy. We know that several projects were launched in the years 2017, 2020. How do you cooperate with the financial institutions of Kazakhstan in terms of transition to the green economy? Thank you very much. Thank you for your invitation. On behalf of the UNDP, let me congratulate you, the financiers, with your financial professional day, and all participants to the 30th anniversary of Kazakhstan, and to emphasize huge and absolute progress in development starting from the beginning of the independence period of the country. I would like to emphasize a little bit the topic of the session, Sustainable Development Goals, and thank you for this opportunity to speak about the achievements and about what is to be done for the Sustainable Development Goals achievements in Kazakhstan. To say briefly of what we have done in the previous year with the government after signature of the agenda on Sustainable Development Goals in 2015. Kazakhstan has achieved many good results on the way to sustainable development. In particular, these results were introduced in the first national review at a large political forum for sustainable development in New York, and it was held as the first regional summit for mobilization of financing to achieve the SDG, because financing is the main topic which is missing, a missing chain to meet the objectives agreed or adopted. At the level of the Coordination Council, which was held this year, there were several important steps made. First of all, the list of national indicators was adopted for the Sustainable Development Goals. I will tell you why it is important. Also, relevant plans were adopted by the government, and decision to provide in the year 2022 another report where all the UN agencies will support. As for financing of the Sustainable Development Goals, I would like to emphasize that for the financial institutions, and we cooperate in this sphere with the actors of the financial market, the Sustainable Development Goals are a useful framework to follow the progress of the national priorities and national standards, and acceleration of development in the development sphere should be supported by the financial resources and should be linked to the indicators and objectives. So that's why it was important to adopt and bring the national status to these goals and indicators so that they could be linked to the financial flows. And the UNDP, together with our colleagues from other UN agencies, started to work on design or development of Kazakhstan, in Kazakhstan, of the Integrated National Financing Network. This is the first offer from the UNDP as a mechanism which will allow developing the decisions or solutions to perform, to supplement the existing lags, to eliminate the existing lags by the year 2030, as an example, in the priority areas determined by the government and society. Why do we need this framework, this program, INFF? To mobilize the additional financing which is lacking, because the government budget is not the only source to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. This complex system would allow the countries, if we include Kazakhstan, to study the spectrum of financial resources existing and available for the sustainable development, from private, public, international, national financial sources, and it will increase the possibility to agree these flows with the priorities. In this sense, we provide the technical assistance and we invite the government to adopt this system in Kazakhstan. A little bit about the public finances. We are working in close cooperation with the government. We, through our expertise or technical assistance, we provide the possibility, the opportunity to use the budget tagging, so-called tagging or coding of budget. Kazakhstan has achieved certain progress to orient the budget to the results within the framework of the strategic government planning, and the SDGs are included into the development of national projects. There are processes of harmonization of the national programs, and currently we support development of such approach to the preparation of the budget according to the Sustainable Development Goals, and a number of 169 goals of SDGs should be approved according to the national programs. As for this budget target, climate tagging is very important.
Let me speak a little bit in details how to provide the financing of climate-oriented programs. In order to provide correct financing, we should do that correctly in order to reach the Paris Agreement goal. You have already shown several statistics from Glasgow. And despite the case's investigation, we see that there is not enough of investments in order to make the transfer to the green economy. There are preliminary estimations saying that there is a deficit on the green economy that makes up 2.3 billion US dollars per year. Taking into consideration the environmental parameters and priorities, there is a key issue: how to speed up transfer to the model of green economy via establishment of system of green financing in the country, in order to develop business in the financially friendly environment. We need to join government and private sector efforts. And regarding the state financing, national financing, according to our evaluation, there is a small understanding of the expenses that are spent for the environment protection, and it menaces the efforts of Kazakhstan in their efforts bringing the balance. And we need to consider the options of climate tagging. That's why we provide our technical assistance. Also, it is important to provide the tagging for the private financing. And we are ready to provide technical assistance not only to the government, but also to our financial partners to implement ESG. And our experts from the financial department can provide appropriate consultancies and tools. And in the global level, there are several tools such as ESG impact, risk insurance, task and boards initiatives, and other ones as well. Thank you once again for showing the video in the beginning of our session, because this video is inviting the countries to step-by-step refusal from the subsidies for the mineral resources extraction and from those subsidies. And it comes along with the SDG and climate goals in order to transfer from the mineral resources to the environmentally friendly resources in order to save the planet. And according to the energy agency, International Atomic Energy Agency, the subsidies for the mineral extracted resources is still there in more than 40 countries, so Kazakhstan is not alone. So we can provide the global expertise, and we can work on that together with the Kazakhstani government and also with private partners. The lessons learned in our work while recovering from the post-lockdown period shows that the green economy stimulation policies are having advantages. For instance, the green construction and the infrastructure of modeling can provide the multiplying effect. It's not only about expenses, but also it is about the benefits for the government. There are researches proving that the infrastructure of the clean energy is requiring lots of labor, and we suppose that each US dollar of expenses is giving the complete fulfillment of infrastructure with the labor, and only 2.5 times can be paid off in the mineral resource extraction. And regarding the UNDP projects implemented in this area in Kazakhstan starting from 2017, and our partnership together with Damu within the frames of the project together with the Ministry of Infrastructural Development, together we develop different mechanisms, and now we perform evaluation on the pilot projects performed. And I'm sure that in the future we are going to diversify them and expand them as well. And we invite international financial institutions to join our efforts. There are progresses achieved in that direction. In a conclusion, regarding your question, in Kazakhstan, the projects that I mentioned before is to compensate the CO2 footprint, and also project on the improvement of agriculture, the ecotourism, the green jobs creation. And besides cooperation with Damu, we also launched the microfinancing scheme of Damu for the populations living in different territories, launching 83 projects all over the country. We performed subsidies for the low-carbon projects and on modernization of existing buildings. We attracted 100 projects from business. 36 of them got financing in a partnership with a foundation, and it is financed by the Global Environmental Foundation. And also they were the first green bonds to the amount of $500,000. And also, let me summarize, there is an interconnection and interdependence between SDG 17 and SDG 169. That's why it's extremely important to provide a multifaceted approach between the state and private sector in order to reach such ambitious goals. Not only SDG, but also to comply with the climate agenda and decarbonization of economy. And also to reach the level that Kazakhstan is targeting to. In case of the gaps in financing, it's important to develop different solutions that I described above. We should join international global resources in order to establish an integrated financing framework in order to see the flows of financing and the way they reach the impact development. Let me finalize in order to give you more time to discuss it with experts, and I'm ready to answer the questions regarding our projects. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Vremish. I'm sure Gaukhar Buribayeva is going to give us more details about Damu projects. Thank you very much for inviting me in such a professional event. Let me provide you with the achievements ESG. Let me congratulate you with the forthcoming holiday of Financiers. The top management of the foundation is regulated with ESG standards and normative documents, and we comply with the SDG UNDP. And we participate in the implementation of SDG UNDP. International investors are rendering much more focus into compliance of SDG, and also we are dealing with the transfer of Kazakhstan to the green economy basis. In order to improve the life quality of the population, and Damu Foundation, being the governmental institution, is bringing the impact. We have stipulated policies to implement those tasks. Currently, the foundation supported 118 projects to the total amount 136 billion tenge. And within the frames of UNDP projects, our foundation is supporting green projects in partnership with the UN and the Global Environmental Fund. According to the sustainable development in cities, we have a joint project in the sphere of the green financing. It was launched in 2017. UNDP provided the financing in the amount of $3 million to provide the subsidies on the main debt and the support of the city infrastructure and to shrink the CO2 footprint. It would be interesting to understand where the money was spent. Kızılorda project using PP project implemented the central heating system also in Şile village, Kızılorda village. The central heating system working before with the coal now replaced with a gas system. Purely green project. Also in Karaganda region, we supported the modernization of the boiling house that was built in 1960. This project shrinked the expenses twice and cut the coal emissions, CO2 emissions. And you see, those projects are really green-based projects. And this way we can explain that owing to this program, the final rate for the entrepreneur, the interest rate is 3–4%. And before we established the committee on the project management, and we were choosing the best experts in this sphere, we were tackling each project in details, and we had representatives from different ministries, UNDP representatives, Damu representatives, and after 4 years we see real case results and the environmental impact. This is the most important. The next project is together with the UNDP to decrease the risk investment into the renewable sources of energy implemented in 2020, benchmarking project, supposing the support of the green projects, $2 million invested from UNDP. And UNDP provided financing to pay the coupons according to the bond program, and they were subsidies provided to cover the main debt and to cover the interest rates. And there was the issuance of the green bonds, and in order to provide the loans of the renewable source of energy. We implemented the compliance with the ICMA standards, means our bonds were registered in the international database. For the successful placement of the green bonds, Damu was awarded with the Pioneer Bonds Initiative Award. Also, there was a construction of the solar panel station in the suburbs of Turkestan city. And the main target is to provide the green-based electric power in order to provide this region. This is a very promising project to develop Turkestan city. In 2020, the population is 176,000 people, and it should grow up to 500,000 people, and there should be new enterprises of business, and there is a high potential in the green bonds towards the renewable sources of energy. This is just few examples. So the scope of financing that we obtain via our international financiers are giving big potential. Within the frames of 2 programs with UNDP, we supported 36 projects for the amount more than 2 billion Tenge. And according to this program, any loan taker in the sphere of greening company can get more than 10% of subsidies from the banking rate in different directions. And we have also the support of governmental programs, the Roadmap for Business 2025. We have already provided support to 88 projects. 134 billion tenge were spent for that. In 2021, the foundation initiated the investment to the Roadmap 2025 in order to determine the definitions. And also there is a new electric power station in Atyrau region.
So this is the 14% per annum using the energy of wind. This project has allowed to reduce the greenhouse gases by 80,000 tons in 2020 only. Damu Fund has an intention to make its contribution to the support of the Green Bridge 2024 and also to bring the share by the 2030 and to achieve the carbon neutrality by 2060. This is a financial state institution and it is supporting all the government initiatives on transition to the sustainable development and green economy. We have a lot of plans and we hope we will extend the financing as well. Thank you. Thank you, Gaukhar. We will come back to you to the question about the social and gender issues. We would like to have more details about this kind of securities. And now I would like to give the floor to Nazira Nurtasovna Sadbekova, Head of Funding Directorate. In September 2021, Nazira, you have issued green bonds to the amount of 20 billion tenge at Kazakhstan Stock Exchange. That was a debut for placement in the territory of Kazakhstan. We know that the demand for this proposal has exceeded the capabilities, and then you have placed these bonds for 10 billion tenge. Who was the investor in these issues, and do you think that the demand will be the same from Kazakhstan investors in our market? Thank you very much. We are always happy to share our experience with the market participants about our implementation of our projects in the equity market. The history of formation of our credit obligations and liabilities starts in 2009, when for the first time we had a debut in the Kazakhstan exchange market with the first transaction with denominated tenge in issuing the government bonds. After that, we had a lot of volumes and transactions. I'm not counting them. We are present in the Russian market, in the international financial markets. We have access to the Chinese exchange markets. I can share more and more my experiences with other participants, how it is done, how you can select proper windows to implement such projects with best quality, and how to work with investors. Our work with investors, once again, I would like to repeat, starting from 2009, when we generated a sound and high-quality basement for the work with investors. That is why every investor is important to us in Kazakhstan. It is obvious our investors are institutional investors, financial organizations, banks, insurance companies, management companies, corporates. Because in the last 2 years we are starting the program of regular approaching the market with short-term notes and bonds, which are mostly used by the corporates. If we talk about the long-term investments, our securities are those for those investors we have mentioned. Of course, these are the management companies who are dealing with the pension funds investments. In Russia, we have a larger scale situation. As you know, we have high development for retail investments. Kazakhstan, this component is just forming, and we will be happy if retail investors will acquire our securities. And in context of green social bonds, here we target more investors who have or should have formed an agenda on responsible investment. If we see investors with the relevant policies, we hear from the investors. We are receiving calls and requests from investors about the bonds and projects selected by us, what will be the reporting on using the funds and influence on the environment after using these funds. So this communication we always have with the investors. And if we see from the retail investors this understanding of the responsible investing, that would be great, because in Russia, the class of such investors has already formed or generated, and we can see a growing trend in such investors, and they drive the market, by the way. As for the Kazakhstan investor, this is institutional investors, and nevertheless we will be happy to see expansion of this structure. We have some plans for development thereof, and to attract not only Kazakhstani investors but also foreign investors in investment into our securities, including the sustainable development securities denominated in the national currencies. We are performing certain work in this direction, and this year we finally have formed and written the own policy on issue and placement of green and social securities and bonds. So this is not about the insurance companies and banks, but any other financial instruments, including hedging instruments. And we see certain instruments from the international foreign investors to buy our liabilities in terms of ESG. Indeed, the work with the banks on ESG is being performed for a long time. We have used a lot of green loans to finance specific projects in this area. That is why, for us, we first of all held a sort of retrospective analysis of our credit portfolio, based on which we determined potential for the further growth. In particular, we see for ourselves that the renewable resource projects will be growing. Now it is about 15% of the total portfolio, and within the framework of the total strategy 2026 of the bank, we want to increase these projects and bring them to 25%. This is for the renewable energy sources projects. Also, energy saving projects in terms of green projects as well. This is critical for us to support the projects connected with the power resources saving technologies. And we look at the social component as well. The social component for us is mostly implemented through the proxy banks. We are active in financing the financial institutions and banks in our participating countries, in particular where they develop and support small and medium-sized businesses, gender financing, microfinancing. In this context, we are present since 2010 and actively finance the private sector. So we have determined the tasks for the nearest future in the course of change of the infrastructure and expectations from our side, from our participating countries. We will change the concepts of our approach, but as a whole, ESG framework of our bank is generated based on 17 SDGs determined by the UN. Thank you very much, Nazira. As far as I understand, as of today, the trend of placement of securities in the market which we have now, this is issue of green and social securities at the market financing rates. In the market, in the world, we have different trends which have less yield, but they provide more financing for the projects which we call green projects or social projects. Alina Optimisovna, what challenges do you see in attracting the green finances projects to be as efficient as standard financing in case if we have same trends like reduction of yield against the quality of the financial instrument or its connection with the sustainable development programs? Thank you, Mariya Khajiyeva. Before proceeding to the bonds, I would like to emphasize that through the stock exchange, from the exchange market, we are trying and do everything possible to be able to finance the economy, the projects of our businesses, national businesses, represented by the government, states, development institutions, or private sector. Today we have mentioned that Kazakhstan has a growing introduction of the green projects and financing of social projects, but as a whole, ESG agenda and sustainable development, they are wider. That is why those exchanges which participate in the International Association of Exchanges starting from 2015, we are a member of the Association of the Sustainable Exchange. We have approached this initiative on 3 directions: ecological, social, and corporate management directions. We perform different measures. Starting from 2015, we are implementing the method for disclosure of non-financial information, which is oriented at disclosure of information, how listing companies follow the ESG policies. And you can see that these companies are listing companies, they are reporting about their policy of development and the projects they will implement. And these trends, they become more and more relevant because in the foreign equity markets, if the company of a carbon nature is not doing a green project, it is more difficult to get the financing by shareholding or by the liabilities. So the price will be increasing for them. The sustainable development goals of the UN, so they are promoted through the equity markets as well. In Kazakhstan, we have adopted ecological code in Kazakhstan this year, and we have joined the initiative on the carbon content reduction, and it allows to restructure the whole economy, the business in the pandemic conditions and the global warming which we observe now. The number of these projects will be growing, so our objective is to finance such projects and make them accessible for the investors. From our side, we are doing everything possible in this direction. We provide regular trainings and educational programs, how to disclose the information, how information is perceived by the investors concerning the companies, and we pay special attention to issuance of the sustainable development bonds. Any bond issuance, this is debt financing. We have decided that social and green bonds should be provided. They should be more accessible in terms of the listing fees and other conditions. We see the market financing of the equity market trades. We have introduced a verifier notion in terms of financing the green and financial projects. They should be done in accordance with the international standards or standards which will be determined by your agency as a regulator of our market. And in this connection, on a voluntary basis, we have reached agreement with potential companies, auditors companies, to make verification free of charge at the initial stage, because verification implies certain costs which will be distributed at the equity market. I think the next step will be to invite the investors for the responsible investments, which is a direction, meaning that the companies attracting different funds for the retail investing, whether it is retail, institutional, or social investing. The projects of social and green nature, they have lower rates for investment and financing. Due to transition to the social projects, social responsibility, the responsible investment, this is something which will be introduced at the institutional investors level, and the trend will be established by the National Bank, and a lot of resources will be required for that, which are controlled by the National Bank, and including our pension fund savings. But now we can summarize that about 7 projects issued by the international development institutions and local institutions, this EBRD, Eurasian Bank of Development, Damu, they have placed a number of bonds of social and green nature in the last 2 years, and we expect that the Kazakhstan Development Bank will join these projects of green financing for the financing of the public and private sector. Today we meet quite often the companies who are performing the projects with the wind power engineering and green engineering. The question is how much it will cost for them, so we'll need to proceed building up this infrastructure. Thank you, Alina.
Just asking you about the comments to what Alina Aldambergen have said regarding the verification of your social projects, and also where are you going to target your income from the implementation of this social project. Yeah, it's true. From the placement of the social bonds, the money was redirected to the social sphere, having the positive social impact. And this social impact was reached due to the support of the small and middle business, whose business suffered a lot during the pandemic. And within the frames of this issuance, we wanted to maintain the job places and to maintain the vulnerable groups of business and to restore the small and middle business. According to the climate bond initiatives in 2020, in the world there were bonds for the sustainable development for the 700 billion US, and this scope in 2020 increased 10 times comparing to the previous year. So starting from pandemic, the global trend is the issuance of the social bonds in order to overcome the traces of COVID. It's called COVID bonds. And the first in Kazakhstani market, we were the first to issue the social bonds basing in KASE, Kazakhstani Stock Exchange, like green bonds. They were registered in the international database. And let me thank Alina and the committee and the National Bank. All the terms and conditions were established for that. And we had a verificator, the Russian agency, and the scope of the bonds issued is 1 billion tenge with a turnover period of 5 years. So there was the Russian agency Expertra, and the social bonds were dedicated to support small and middle business in the sphere of the transport, hotels, such sectors of economy who directly and indirectly suffered from the restrictions during lockdown. The most suffered sectors of economy were chosen according to the governmental decree. 29 codes of economy activity were determined, and the rate was 0 for the social payments, and we placed this money in the second tier banks for the following loan provision. Also, the beneficiaries of the income from the social bonds, also they can use the instruments of subsidizing within the frames of Damu projects. And there is a wide spectrum, including of the food security, women entrepreneurship, establishment of the basic infrastructure, financing of schools, hospitals, and accessible housing. And we have already developed a lot women entrepreneurship together with Tatyana in collaboration with EBRD. We implemented Women in Business project, and EBRD financed the second-tier banks under the complete Damu guarantee. And also we obtained the Asian Development Bank financing, and we financed women entrepreneurs, and in Damu portfolio we supported 699 projects with women entrepreneurs. And this is our experience with international financial institutions, and for now we attracted around $1 billion US, and historically in collaboration with EBRD and ABD, before issuing the social bonds, we have already started the continuous work to provide support to different key groups of population. We are going to continue development of ESG instruments in Kazakhstan, take into consideration our goals in Damu Foundation. We're going to place social bonds in order to finance the green projects, social projects, women entrepreneurs, education, all the sectors suitable for the social projects understanding. In addition, due to the fact we are working in compliance with the SDG of UN, it's important for us to work on time and act in ESG. We are planning to perform the risk assessment according to ESG and to provide the rating from the international agency on that. Thank you. Tatyana, are you going to add something? Yes, I wanted to add that this issue on the risks and ESG principle implementation is global and relevant for all the markets. And the annual economic forum for the third year is saying that environmental risks are the primary risks. 4 out of 5 global risks are determined as ecological environmental risks. They fail in the climate warming fight and the biodiversity, and 2 more aspects. Regarding the ESG implementation and the financial sector governance are the most relevant topic. The development of financial organizations is giving additional expansion to extract and insert the capital, and also to disclose the climate financial information, and also regarding the competitive advantages, the improvement of risks regarding devaluation, and those that are relevant to the climate change. And within the frames of the climate risks, it is widely accepted as considerable risks. Also, there is a risk of the period of transfer. This is about the investors and which way the organizations are reacting to those changes. We are observing the changes in the business strategies and investment policies, and also the deletion of the projects related to the fossil minerals, and now the investment level is more than $11 trillion US. Almost all financial organizations announced that they're going to limit financing to oil, gas and coal industry. And besides that, there is a revision of the portfolio investment from the retirement foundations towards the environmentally friendly projects. And we see that the rating agencies are revising their methodology in order to reflect the environmental risks and to apply new methodologies to determine their clients' database. And also there is an increase in requirements to disclose the information on climate risks and the way the companies are implementing that in their business strategies. For instance, London Stock Exchange is requiring the listed companies to disclose that information starting from 2021. Being the bank, we understand that those changes should be introduced in all levels in our countries of presence, and besides the long-term presence in the green economy financing, we formed the package of the technical support for our clients in the amount of $25 million in order to improve the climate risk management and implementation of the corporate governance practices. Also, you mentioned that EBRD made a decision to comply the project with the Paris Agreement by the end 2021. Currently, we are applying higher requirements to the green component of our investments because all the investments of EBRD should contain at least 50% towards the green economy purposes. Starting from 2013, we financed 113 projects to the amount 2.3 billion euro. And we see huge prospects, and it gives us a big pleasure to assist governments to promote transfer to the green economy. And we are ready to assist that more. Thank you, Tatyana. As far as we may see during our discussion, there is a high relevance of different financial instruments provided by financial organizations in the territory of Kazakhstan, and the issuance of the financial instruments should be done more actively by domestic organizations regarding SDG compliance. Let me share two provisions supposing the way agencies to introduce stage-by-stage compliance with the ESG standards in order to regulate the financial market of Kazakhstan. If you may see this slide, we foresee stage-by-stage introduction of ESG into the regulation of the financial market of Kazakhstan. Here are the blocks to implement the ESG principles. This document is the recommendation, not the obligatory one. And the first stage is about the drafting of recommendations to implement the ESG principles in the financial organizations. The second stage is about the development of the legislative requirements to financial organizations to implement ESG principles. And the third stage is about monitoring ESG risks and their integration into the supervision system, and the requirements on the information disclosure by organizations. And the third stage we hope to implement in 2023-2024. We are going to include ESG risks as one of the indices of the qualitative measures for SREP, and also it is about development of different scenarios for stress testing of ESG risks and application of multifaceted regulatory measures to improve the operations in organizations with higher ESG risks. So it's better to work stage by stage instead of revolution. So this way of step-by-step introduction would be soft and convenient both for financial organizations and for the perceptions of investors. Let me thank you for participating in our session. Thanks a lot to the speakers and online participants for the interests to the SDG topics. Let me congratulate you with the Financiers Day, and let me wish you to have good health, wealth.